So good afternoon. My name is Roy Nascimento. I have the honor and privilege of serving as the President and CEO of the North Central Massachusetts Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of the Board of Directors of the Chamber and our staff, I want to welcome you to our 2022 Congressional Luncheon. So we established this annual program several years ago as a forum for our members to hear from and connect with the members of our delegation on Capitol Hill, and to ask questions on the issues that are important to local businesses and to North Central Massachusetts. This forum has certainly taken on a new significance in recent years given the challenges that we have faced as a nation and the decisions being made in Washington, D.C. Before we continue, I would like to give thank you all for participating in today's luncheon. It gives me great pleasure to look out and see such a strong participation. This program has really grown over the years. And I think it speaks volumes about the level of business leadership and engagement in North Central Massachusetts. Now, I know I'm a little biased, but I do believe that we are one of the most dynamic and effective chambers in Massachusetts and New England. Thank you. But the credit goes to all of you, because we are only successful because of the dedication and commitment of people who believe in our mission and work hard to fulfill it. And that's on display here today. So thank you again for your support. Thank you for participating today. Thank you for showing up. I'd also like to express our thanks to our congressional delegation, U.S. Representative James McGovern of the 2nd Congressional District, and U.S. Representative Lori Trahan of the 3rd Congressional District. I want to extend my thanks to both of them. Thank you for your commitment to participate every year in this forum and engage with local business leaders. I'd be remiss if I didn't take a moment to acknowledge and thank our sponsor who helped make today's program possible. I'd like to extend a big thank you to our premier sponsor, Fitchburg State University, right here. Thank you. We are very grateful to the university's support of this program. This forum is important to North Central Massachusetts for a number of reasons, recognizing that they stepped forward as the founding sponsor when we launched this event. And their support reflects their dedication to our communities, their commitment to the Chamber and our members, and their support of civic engagement. You'll hear from Dr. Richard Lapidus, President of the University, in a moment, but at this time I'd like to ask for another round of applause to thank them for their support and active involvement. And before I call them up, I want to acknowledge and thank FATV as well. FATV is here today recording the program and will be airing this in Fitchburg, and they also have an arrangement with many of the other local cable access stations, and they share it with all of them throughout the region. Can we have a round of applause for FATV? So I want to take a moment to highlight some special guests that have joined us. We have some elected officials here from North Central Massachusetts who have joined us here today, and I'd like to acknowledge them. And let's start with our state representatives. We have Representative Kilcoyne here. Thank you for joining us. Representative Kuchmarek and Representative Sina. And we have 2 of our 3 mayors here. Mayor DiNatale is here. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Mayor Nicholson is here. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we also have the Register of Deeds, Kathleen Reynolds Degnault, who's here. Leominster City Councilor Claire Frieda is here. Templeton Town Administrator Adam Lamontagne is here. Thank you. Former State Senator Brewer is here. Thank you. Thank you, Steve, for joining us. And that's all I have for elected officials on my list. So if you're an elected official and you're here and I didn't announce you, I apologize, but you're just not on my list, and it doesn't mean we don't love you. So apologize if I missed anyone. So I need to draw your attentions now to the forms at each of your tables. There should be a little card like this. It says, have a question. These forms are for the question and answer portion of our program. Representative McGovern and Trahan have graciously agreed to answer some questions following the formal part of our program. A.J. Tarigny is here. He's the Special Assistant to the President for Community Governmental Affairs and Special Projects at Fitchburg State University, has graciously agreed to serve as the MC for today's program, and he'll moderate the audience Q&A portion of the program. Chamber staff will be available to collect the question cards later in the program. So again, if you have any questions, take a moment to jot them down on these forms, hold them up, and someone from the chamber staff will collect them. So now, it gives me great honor. I'd like to introduce our sponsor, Fitchburg State University, and President Dr. Richard Lapidus. President Lapidus is in his 8th year at Fitchburg State and has helped lead many of the important partnerships between higher education and the business community. Please welcome Dr. Richard Lapidus.
Thank you, Roy. It's great to be here. Thank you all for joining us. Fitchburg State, as Roy mentioned, we started this program, I think, about 5 or 6 years ago, and excited to keep it going. Always interesting and informative. So thank you for joining us. I want to again extend a thank you to Congressman McGovern, Congresswoman Trahan for you coming out and sharing your thoughts on some of the key issues of the day. Both have been strong supporters of our region, supporters of education, and good friends to the university. So thank you both for being here. Typically, Roy tells me I get 2 minutes, and he made a strategic mistake today. He didn't tell me what my time limit was. So I'll be going for, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes here. But really, I just wanted to let everyone know from the university's perspective, we are up and running again as we were pre-COVID. The campus is vibrant. Students are excited to be back. Faculty are excited to be doing what they do best. We were open full last year, but I think that the population still had a bit of trepidation about what activity would look like on the campus. They had 1 foot in, 1 foot out. But this year I feel as though we've sort of turned the corner on that. As you know, as I look across this room here, it's full. People seem to be comfortable. We're not masking anymore and seem to have, for the most part, COVID under control. So I'm excited about that. So usually I talk about one thing, and I guess what I wanted to highlight this year, so our university priority project, and we have some renderings up. We've been working aggressively to restore the old 1929 vaudeville theater on Main Street in Fitchburg. It's a beautiful old building. It clearly needs some work, but I think it's a historic landmark worth saving. The project is kind of a dual-purpose project. When we did our marketing research in the region, essentially the community told us 2 things. One, they felt we needed a small black box theater for sort of community kinds of productions, and that certainly fits with the educational mission of the university. The theater arts program, technical theater activities across the humanities, and then the restoration of the main theater itself, which would provide opportunities to bring commercial productions to Fitchburg. Right now, the closest theater of comparison, and not really so much, would be the Hanover Theater in Worcester, a theater considerably larger than this, which gets a lot of attraction from this area, but it would be nice to have a theater in our region. And it turns out that amongst the art community, there's a lot of collaboration. Initially, we were concerned that perhaps it was going to be a competitive environment, and it turns out not to be that way. If you understand, the theater business, shows can size up and size down depending upon the theater. So, you know, if we were on Broadway, it was Cats. At the Hanover, there's a few less Cats. And then when they hit Fitchburg, it's just Cat. But nonetheless, it's an opportunity to bring professional quality programming to the city, and we're excited about that. So if there's an interest in that, please let me know, and we can get you involved in some way. Just a couple of other quick things on the education front. If you or someone you know is interested in undergraduate programming, there is an open house this Saturday, and there's also one on the 29th to learn about the programs and the things we do at the university. If you're interested in graduate education, there's an opportunity again to be in a traditional classroom or to do it online. There is an open house tonight, I believe, a virtual open house. So there will be an opportunity to jump on that. I think it starts at 6 o'clock and take a look and see what the offerings might be there. And then finally, the last pitch that I make every year, the university is an applied university. We take a great amount of effort in trying to give students hands-on, authentic learning experiences. And so for the people in this room, the way that you could contribute to that would be to think about internship possibilities, or if there's a project maybe in your organization that you've been trying to get off the ground, don't have enough manpower, perhaps a class in an appropriate subject would be able to help you move forward. It's a great opportunity to take a look at the talent of our students at no cost to you, and perhaps gives them an opportunity to secure a job at the end of the experience if there's a good match. So again, thank you for taking the time to listen to me, and thank you again for coming out and participating in this activity today. Thanks.
Nice job, and under the 15 minutes. That's great. So thank you again, Dr. Lapidus. I know it is now my pleasure to welcome today's MC, Fitchburg State University's Special Assistant to the President for Community Governmental Affairs and Special Projects. That's a very long title, AJ. So, AJ Tarigny. Welcome, AJ.
Good afternoon, folks. I'm pleased to be here with you today to moderate the speaking portion of today's program. I'd like to quickly add a note of recognition and thanks before I begin to my colleague, Mr. Matt Bruin. He has been the moderator of this luncheon for the past few years now, and he has since passed that baton over to me for this year. As you all know, Matt is an excellent contributor to North Central. He's an active Fitchburg resident, a wonderful educator through his ability to articulate difficult concepts into short news articles that keep us all up to date with the latest developments, whether it be FSU or around the region. So a warm thank you to Matt. Yes, please. Civic engagement is crucial for the business community to ensure the voice of both Central is heard at the local, state, and federal levels. We are fortunate to be joined today by two distinguished members of our congressional delegation, of whom I'd like to introduce. Congressman Jim McGovern was born and raised in Worcester, Massachusetts, the son of two successful small business owners. In 1982, McGovern started working as an aide for the late U.S. Representative John Joseph Moakley, former dean of the Massachusetts delegation and chairman of the powerful House Rules Committee, which sets the terms of debate on almost all legislation that comes before the House of Representatives. McGovern ran for Congress in 1996, and in 2019 was named chairman of the Rules Committee. McGovern has made ending hunger a key focus in his time in public service, frequently speaking on the House floor about the challenges that middle class and working families face in putting healthy food on the table. He's a member of the House Agricultural Committee Subcommittee on Nutrition, and recently spoke at the second ever White House Conference on Hunger, Nutrition, and Health, which he secured after decades of advocacy. His sisters are school teachers in Worcester's public school system, and his wife, Lisa, works at a nonprofit dedicated to preventing cancer. Welcome, Congressman McGovern. Serving in her second term after being reelected to the House of Representatives in 2020, Congresswoman Lori Trahan is a member of the prestigious House Energy and Commerce Committee. In her role of the committee, she has advanced legislation to address the addiction crisis, support teen and youth mental health, protect people from the dangers of social media, and make unprecedented investments in rebuilding our region's infrastructure. Part of the vaunted pink wave in 2018 that elected more women to the House of Representatives than any point in American history, Congresswoman Trahan holds the distinction of being the first Portuguese-American woman to ever serve on Capitol Hill. Prior to her election, Trahan served in Congressman Meehan's office, the same office she now holds. For nearly a decade, rising to become his chief of staff, she went on to take the executive post in the technology sector before co-founding the woman-owned and operated consulting firm Concierge. In this role, she provided client companies advice on business strategy and steps they could take to ensure staff success, with a particular focus on helping women advance the senior roles. The daughter of a working-class parent and granddaughter of immigrants, she graduated from Lowell High School before becoming the first in her family to graduate from college, attending Georgetown University on a volleyball scholarship. Welcome, Congresswoman Trahan. Again, welcome and thank you for your time to meet and discuss the issues and also, I would like to say, the assets of our region. After our conversation, we're opening questions up to the audience. Folks, you can find forms on the table, write your questions, and you can do so with the lovely FSU pens that you have that was kindly placed at your seat this morning. And Chamber staff, our friends Kate, Lauren, and Travis will be around to collect your questions. If time allows, we'll hit them up. All right. Are we ready for question one?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Congresswoman Trahan, the country has seen the highest inflation in decades. What aspects of the Inflation Reduction Act do each of you believe will prove to be the most beneficial to the business community in North Central Mass?
Well, first of all, AJ, thank you for having me. Roy, thanks for convening all of us again this year. It's great to be here, and I'm glad you got started with the Inflation Reduction Act because I have to say the last 2 years have been productive years, both with the American Rescue Plan, the bipartisan infrastructure law, the Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIPS and Science Act, and so. I think the reason why this is the first year I have notes with me is because these bills are massive and they're delivering unbelievable value to communities and families across this district. So there are so many ways that the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, will help businesses. First of all, I think of healthcare and the extension of Obamacare's premium tax credit through 2025, which is going to allow so many small business owners to continue their healthcare coverage at an affordable rate, right? When you think of starting your own business as an entrepreneur and investing that money, with this savings of $800 per year, you don't have to make the trade-off on going uncovered while you start your own business, which is an incredible relief for so many who have to grapple with the cost of healthcare while starting their own business. The other is, I think, in energy. Big part of what the Inflation Reduction Act did is lower energy costs for our small businesses. So 30% a tax credit for when you switch to a low-cost solar provider, another 30% tax credit when you move your fleet from fossil fuels to EVs, and there is so much more, right? We are boosting American manufacturing in the solar, wind, and the carbon capture industries, and we increased the R&D tax credit for small businesses from $250,000 to $500,000, and so all of these are investments in our productivity in our small businesses. One, so we can do a couple of things: put you on a path to success, take advantage of this transition and this acceleration of this transition to cleaner, greener technologies and manufacturing floors. But also decreasing the burden and the cost of healthcare. So I think much of what we're trying to do in Washington is decrease the cost, not just for hardworking families, but also for our businesses. And we understand look, inflation it's a global phenomenon. It's a post-COVID phenomenon that is really hurting not just our families, but also our business and our industries. And what we need to do is make sure that we are able to put our hands firmly on the levers of which we control to lower those costs. And I think you've seen that with prescription drug price reduction in the IRA. You're seeing that by extending the affordable health care and the premium tax credits, as well as our energy costs, because this transition will ultimately lower the costs of our utility bills for our small businesses and for our families.
Awesome. Thank you, Congressman McGovern.
Well, thank you. I agree with her. But AJ, thank you. Roy, thank you, in the North Central Chamber. President Lapidus, thank you, and Fitchburg State University for your sponsorship. And thank you all for being here. Look, these are challenging times. Inflation is real, and it's a struggle for so many of our families and our businesses, not only in the North Central region, but all throughout the state and all throughout the country. I just want to emphasize one thing Laurie Trahan said that I think is really important for everybody to understand. This is a global phenomenon. People can blame Joe Biden or people can blame Donald Trump, but you're missing the point. This is the result of a global pandemic, the likes of which we have never seen in our lifetime, when the entire world economy shut down. And as a result of that, the demand for products went way down. We also learned during the pandemic the fact that we have supply chain issues. For many, many decades, we've been outsourcing everything, and so we weren't making anything here. I mean, if you all remember, we didn't even have a place to get face masks at the beginning of the pandemic. And so the challenge for all of us, no matter what our politics may be, is to sit down and seriously figure out how we move forward and what we need to do. And so we need to deal with supply chain issues. And the Inflation Reduction Act does that to a certain extent, but so does the CHIPS bill that we passed. And it's going to take a little while to get our supply chain up to where it needs to be. These things just don't happen overnight. The outsourcing of all of our jobs didn't just happen overnight. And the focus that we have in Congress is, how do we help keep costs down for families and for businesses during this time? Laurie mentioned some of the energy provisions in the Inflation Reduction Act, but just as importantly are the health care provisions, especially the provision that will lower prescription drugs for our senior citizens, giving Medicare the ability to negotiate en bulk on behalf of all of Medicare recipients lower drug prices. There's even a cap on monthly out-of-pocket costs for insulin. We actually had that for everybody, not just senior citizens. Unfortunately, we had some people in the Senate that had a problem with that, and we weren't able to maintain it, but we need to fix it. So lowering prescription drugs will help deal with inflation. Lowering energy costs. Gas prices have been going down. Sadly, we see Saudi Arabia, join forces with Russia right now. We're going to have to try to figure out a way to get around that. But as we have to tackle these things one at a time. And I guess the point I'm trying to make is that, with all the shouting that is going on in Washington, with all the political punditry that likes to point fingers, at the end of the day, we got to solve this problem. And the way we solve it is through passing some of the legislation that we have recently passed. But we have a lot more to do. There's a responsibility not just for the federal government, but for state government as well, and for local government. And we need to work together as a team to get through this. We will get through this. I believe that we'll see inflation begin to go down in a matter of months. I really do believe that. We want to avoid a recession in the process, but let's focus on things that will help people and help small businesses, and not just get into the usual shouting match that happens, especially every election year.
Thank you. And Congresswoman, as you mentioned earlier, these bills are fairly complicated. And so I believe next week we're going to try to cut some of the fat out to help people understand that. And you'll be coming to Fitchburg State as well, correct?
Yes, I'll be there next Wednesday, I believe, at FSU, I think at 6 p.m. To do a panel. And it's so important. I think Jim and I are, and all of our teams, both in Washington and up here in Massachusetts, we're working with our state partners, our local partners, to unpack all the programs that can deliver value to our communities, right? I mean, so many things are in the tax relief or the tax subsidy bucket, which we have to make families aware of LIHEAP and the fact that they can go to, our community action agencies and get relief for their home heating bills and their electricity bills this winter. But we have to do the same. We have to play that same role for our communities. For me, it's all 37 of them, right? Making sure they understand the infrastructure dollars and the competitive grants that they can apply for, whether it's a culvert, which I've done more announcements and check drops for culverts, to intersections, to bridges in Fitchburg, as well as all the value that we're going to see with just in Massachusetts alone. I know we'll get to the CHIPS and Science Act, but this part of our state in particular is really well poised to benefit from the return of American manufacturing, the return of chips, of advanced chip design. We already have the cluster here. We have incredible public state universities. We have businesses that already have relationships and partnerships with academia and now with the federal government stepping up to ensure that we bring those jobs back. I think Massachusetts is going to be really poised well to collaborate and get that funding. So I'm excited, and I think Jim and I are both going to keep doing what we're doing, and that's making sure that we help translate everything that's in that bill to our partners so that we get as much of that funding here to this region.
Excellent, thank you. And a shameless plug, Fitchburg State University, October 19th, 6 p.m. Part of STEM Week with Dr. Hanselman, who's here today. And it will be certainly a great event. And we have the Executive Office of Environmental and Energy Affairs participating in the Environmental League as well. So we touched a little bit on it. I think we can kind of dive in a little bit more, but healthcare in regards to the IRA. Employers and workers are concerned about the cost of healthcare. How will the IRA curb rising health costs? And do you see the bipartisan support for broader healthcare reform after the midterms?
So, as I said, I mean, we're tackling the issue of prescription drugs and some additional subsidies to the Affordable Care Act that will make healthcare more affordable for people. Do I see bipartisan support? I don't. I wish I was wrong, and I'm just being honest with you. I mean, the response to the provisions that we've just passed by the Republican leader is that they want to repeal the Inflation Reduction Act when they get in. So that will raise prices on senior citizens. That will lift the $35 cap on insulin. Doesn't make any sense to me. So I worry about that, and none of us know what's going to happen in November, but I think we want to make sure we keep what is good. Just because the idea maybe came from Joe Biden doesn't mean it's bad. Just because the idea came from Donald Trump doesn't mean that it's necessarily bad. We have to analyze these ideas and issues, one by one. If it's good, we keep it. If it's bad, we try to repeal it. But lowering the costs for senior citizens in particular, but for everybody, is something we need to do. In your introduction, you kindly made reference to the second ever White House conference on hunger, nutrition, and health. The first one happened in 1969. That was a time when we actually thought big in this country. We put a person on the moon that year. And we actually made great strides toward ending hunger and actually promoting nutrition to deal with diet-related diseases. And then we moved away from that, and we've backslided. And we live in a country now where there are 35 million people who don't know where the next meal is going to come from. Diet-related diseases are at an all-time high. And so this is an attempt to say, how do we do this better? How do we, and by doing it better, we can control healthcare costs. I mean, the idea that nutrition is divorced from healthcare in so many respects makes no sense to me. I mean, food is medicine. My grandmother used to say, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. It would annoy me. I wish she was still alive so I could say, you were right? We had the mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, speak, who had diabetes so bad at one point his doctor said, you are going to lose toes and fingers and you are going to go blind. And then he found a doctor who said, you need to change your lifestyle. And he did. He changed his diet. And now he's in perfect shape. And by the way, his mother followed the same recommendation, and she has kind of pushed back the disease. The bottom line is we need to think of healthcare differently, especially when it comes to food and nutrition. And if we do this right, we can not only improve the quality of life for people, we can also actually save a boatload of money. Like 80% of diseases that people come down with are preventable. So let's go back to focusing on how we can control costs by keeping people well, rather than just always having to focus on what do we do when people are really, really sick. And it's not just in our hospitals, it's in our schools. I mean, we need to think very, very differently about it. The good news is that out of this White House conference has come some really innovative ideas. And there are hospitals and health centers all over the country that are doing incredible things that can be models for the rest of us. And there are some examples here in Massachusetts as well. I visited a place in Leominster called Growing Places, many of you know about. I brought the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Javier Becerra, there. It was an incredible experience for him. But we need to build on those models. And so when we talk about controlling healthcare costs and the cost of healthcare, it's not just this subsidy, that subsidy, and this and that. It is about thinking about how we do this differently, and we have an opportunity to do that right now.
Please go.
So first of all, I have to take this moment to just thank and publicly commend Jim McGovern for his leadership on child hunger in our country. He is the premier voice. He basically asserted and made, the first conference on hunger at the White House just this month, the first one in over 50 years. And if we could just give him a round of applause for making this front and center. Because it is true, everything that he said in terms of how it intersects with our healthcare and how we think about healthcare delivery. And if there are doctors or nurses in the room, you know that. We need patients to co-produce their care, and hunger is and how we talk about food and diet with our children all the way up to our seniors is a huge component of that. Jim already touched on in the first question on so many of the things that the IRA had improved upon. For Medicare beneficiaries, right? The cap on out-of-pocket costs at $2,000, the cap on insulin at $35. We had wanted the ability for Medicare to negotiate prescription drug prices, which are going to dramatically bring those costs down for our seniors. Of course, we wanted that to be for everyone. And so we're hoping after the midterms that we can go back to the table and continue to make sure everybody's health costs come down. The one thing I will say, because you brought up bipartisan, and sometimes the world can feel really grim because we don't use that word anymore. And I'll tell you one place where I think we must act in a bipartisan way, and I do see glimmers of hope on the committee that I serve on Energy and Commerce, and that's the mental health crisis that is bubbling up. It doesn't matter if we're talking about my 8 and 12-year-old daughters, my stepsons who are in their 20s, our seniors, our frontline workers who just went through an exhausting and unprecedented last couple of years. We must make the delivery of mental health care stigma-free and affordable and accessible. And I think that is something where you're going to see folks come together, because that is a problem that's facing every district, every community, every family, frankly, in our country.
Thank you. And the Congressman touched on it a little bit in regards to bipartisan support. It's a little difficult right now on Capitol Hill. But how do we, following the decision of the overturn of Roe versus Wade, how do we garner that support to protect women's health?
Yeah, there's no easy answer on this one. I mean, we have to go vote. We need different players. We don't have 10 Senate Republicans who are actually going to vote to preserve the right that women have had for the last 50 years. And so don't want to seem overly political, but there's only one clear answer there. And so I think that's the reason why you're seeing a lot of motivation and energy going into this election cycle, is because that is a core right that families and women have we've had since we've been born, in my case, and everyone younger. And this extreme Supreme Court in an instant took it away and frankly changed the face of our country. Now, we've tried to legislate and codify Roe in the House. Republicans did not join us on that, given the opinion that was also written when that fate was handed to the American people. We also moved to codify same-sex marriage and access to contraception. an embarrassingly number of Republicans joined us on that, and the Senate hasn't acted. So, look, this is a scary time. I think it's a scary time for women. I think that this, has long been a movement that has been kind of under the guise of pro-life, when really it's just anti-choice. I think about my own history. I fought really hard to have my 2 daughters. I went through 5 years of IVF at great personal pain and loss. Because I so badly wanted to have a family. So this is not pro-life. This is about taking away choice and control and freedom from women to plan their own futures and to plan their own families. And for that, everyone needs to lean into this issue. Everyone needs to understand what's on the ballot in 26 days.
So look, in the day that Dobbs' decision was handed down, my daughter actually came into the room and said to me, "It's now official. I have fewer rights than Mom," and what a horrific thing to hear, because we always think of our country as a place where we are constantly expanding the rights of people. And my mother, who is in her 80s, but don't tell her I said that, but who is never shy about telling me what she thinks. She calls every day, "Why haven't you fixed everything?" But her response was like, "Who the hell are you people?" Mostly predominantly a male Supreme Court and Congress, to do this. Get out of here. It's none of your business, right? And again, it's so offensive. But it's not the end, right? And I've heard people here in Massachusetts say, "Well, we're Massachusetts and we get this, we get that, we have great legislators," and on and on and on. We do have great legislators here, but this is not the end of it. I mean, legislation has been introduced for a national ban, and if that ever became law, that would impact Massachusetts. Now there's conversations about limiting birth control, access to birth control. And now, thanks to Clarence Thomas's concurring opinion, we're now talking about going after marriage equality and other issues. And it's like, is that the direction we really want to go in? And I think the overwhelming number of people in this country don't want to go there. And by the way, this is a healthcare issue too. You're reading already in the states where they have passed very, very restrictive anti-abortion laws, where women who need surgery to deal with miscarriages are being denied surgery. A young girl who was raped, who was 10 or 11 years old, had to go to another state. No, that's not the country we want. And so, look, this should not be a partisan issue. It never was. It never used to be. On these issues, there was always a bipartisan vote yes and a bipartisan vote no. But all of a sudden, this has become this litmus test. We don't want a country where people have fewer rights. We want a country where there are more rights. And by the way, for those who are so insistent on trying to take away this right, it would be nice if they would step up and help us make sure that we take care of people, after they are born as well, right? Because that's a challenge that we deal with every day.
I'd like to switch over to the workforce. I think everyone in this room has been hit by the Great Recession and the difficult labor market that we've all been experiencing the last few years. And as we come out on the other side of the pandemic, businesses in the region continue to see an extremely tight labor market. How could meaningful immigration reform ease this issue? And is there a path to compromise?
Me first?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So that's a great question. No matter where I go in this district, I hear about two things. Of course, the high cost of living, right? Mental health, which I think is on a lot of families' minds, and workforce issues. Can't find workers. It doesn't matter what industry. It doesn't matter if it's a small business. Doesn't matter if it's seasonal business, if it's a farm, or I was just at New Balance before I came here in Lawrence. This is an issue that is affecting every single industry, and it's driving up prices. We know this. We know that a solution to our workforce issues is immigration, right? I mean, we have so many immigrants who want to come into our country. We have so many already living in our country, wanting to work. They want a path to legalization. They want to work. And we are not giving them the tools to come and find a better life. I use the example all the time. My grandmother was from Brazil. She worked in a textile mill in Lowell, like so many immigrants did in Lowell and Lawrence and Haverhill and Fitchburg, all across the district I represent. And she didn't live to see me become the first person in my family to graduate from college, nor get sworn into the U.S. Congress. But like when I walk into the mill buildings all across Lowell, including my congressional office, I am reminded of how what our country is capable of when we are at our very best. This is going to be a bottleneck as we funnel money into things that we are long overdue. Infrastructure projects, the CHIPS and Science Act, bringing manufacturing home, and so much more, transitioning from fossil fuels to clean energy. We're gonna need workers. And we've got two levers here, folks. It's immigration and letting all the people who want to come to our country to work and be productive and create a better life to come and fill those jobs. It's about retraining our own workers through the incredible programs that Fitchburg has already talked about in terms of co-ops and internships and getting folks the tools they need and the on-the-job training they need to be productive on day one. And then it's childcare. We still have millions of women in this country who are not able to go to work because the math doesn't work. So we know what the solutions are to reducing the costs that hardworking families are facing every day and to making it easier for small businesses to find the employees and the labor that they need to deliver on your value proposition. But Washington needs to get its act together with comprehensive immigration reform, getting child care so that it's more affordable and accessible for all families, and certainly, investing in our education, every single lane, our college affordability, our technical and vocational schools, our apprenticeships, and so much more. So I think that is the task Congress is going to have to, really focus on to keep pace with the investments that we've made that we'll see from now on the 5-10-year horizon.
Yeah, I mean, look, Laurie's absolutely right. I think we all know it, right, that we need to do something about immigration. On Manufacturing Day, it was last week, I think, I toured Starrett Precision Tool in Athol. My friend Steve Brewer knows it very well. And it was really interesting because I went around meeting employees and how long have you been here? 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 45 years. I'm like, unbelievable. Which it is, right? I mean, that people, have been at this job and have found a place where they wanted to work, for all that time. It's great. But then I was told, look, the problem is they can't be here for another 40 years. Just can't last, right? We need a workforce. We are already short. We are working with the vocational technical schools. It's not enough. We want to work with our community colleges, our state universities, and it's still not enough. And so immigration has to be part of this. And the administration has announced kind of doubling the H-2B visa cap so there'll be additional workers, but it won't be anywhere near enough to meet the demand out there. And by the way, not just in manufacturing, talk about healthcare services where people go to homes. Our schools are short. Our hospitality industry is short. We did a 2-week abbreviated vacation at the Cape. Not a 2-week, a 2-day abbreviated vacation at the Cape. I'm still hearing about it, but anyway. But I was walking down the street and a guy came out of a motel and he says, "Are you McGovern?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I am." He says, "We need people to work here." And everything from groundskeeping to working in the hotel, and we put out applications. We don't have any. Nobody's applying. So it's in the highly skilled industries all the way down to workers that don't require a lot of skills. And by the way, our businesses are stepping up, providing apprenticeship programs, training programs, internships. All that stuff is really, really good. So if we can't find the workers here, we need to bring them in, because if not, we cannot be competitive with the rest of the world. We talked about this CHIPS bill. We're investing all this new money to revitalize this industry here. I got a company in Worcester that is working in this field. They can't get people to work. So, used to be, the problem was we're not investing the resources. Well, we are investing the resources in every area you can think of. Even in terms of infrastructure, we passed the biggest infrastructure bill in the history of the country. Massachusetts, and because we love our state legislators so much, we're giving them an additional $12 billion to invest in upgrading our infrastructure here. I mean, I drive around my district. I did a Google search on structurally deficient bridges in my district. I'm lucky I'm alive. I mean, seriously, the state of disrepair of our bridges and our roads in this state, we're an old state, we're older than most of the other states in the country, so the money's there, but we may not have the workforce to do all the work. And here's my final thing I'm going to say. Whether it's on the American Rescue Act money, the state still has a big chunk of that money to spend, or whether it's on the infrastructure money, we need to spend it. We need to get our act together and start drawing down that money, because the one thing Laurie and I both know, depending on who's in charge, if there's money that has been provided to states that they haven't spent it down or obligated it, then you got members of Congress who will say, well, you really don't need it. We want to claw it back. So this is our opportunity to rebuild the state, and not just roads and bridges, but also in terms of east-west rail we want to see happen here. There's a whole bunch of stuff, but in any event, we need to fix our immigration laws. That is essential if we're going to be competitive.
Thank you. And in a transition to, please.
That doesn't mean we don't understand the importance of protecting our borders, all right? I mean, because we do. We do. And I have a whole bunch of opinions on that I'm happy to share with you. But the point of the matter is, we need workers. We need workers now.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And in relation to the workforce and in manufacturing, I think all of us understood how we didn't quite understand how heavily we relied on microchips until the pandemic. Yeah. And so in an effort to better compete in the tech sector, and we've already slightly touched on this on the world stage, Washington, D.C. passed the CHIPS Act. How will this act help the U.S. manufacturers, and are you concerned about the $52 billion subsidy price tag? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, everything we buy has these little chips in them. Right? I mean, people complain they want to buy a car and they're told they have to wait months because there's a backlog. And the backlog has to do with supply chain issues. It has to do with chips, right? So, our phones, I mean, you name it. And again, as I said in the beginning, we've been outsourcing everything for decades. And we never thought, that we would ever have a pandemic where all of a sudden we would realize that it's not a good idea to be outsourcing everything. We need to make more things here. So yeah, it's a big price tag, but we need to rebuild our supply chains. It is essential. If we don't, then we're going to find ourselves at the mercy of other countries, whether it's China, whether it's, you name the country, right? So look, I'm all for international trade, but I'm also for making stuff here, right? And I'm also for employing people here. In the semiconductor chip industry, I mean, the fact that we just allowed that to be almost totally outsourced, even in the baby formula industry. I mean, who would have ever thought that we would have a shortage of baby formula in this country? Or who would have ever thought that we didn't have a stockpile of baby formula in case there was a national emergency? Well, we've learned some very hard lessons during the pandemic. And if we don't step up and fix them, then history will repeat itself. I don't want that to happen.
Jim hit all the major points. I mean, I think we all realized during the pandemic, like really from the first week of the pandemic, how reliant we were on a foreign supply chain. And the CHIPS and Science Act is born out of that realization, right? We are going to bring manufacturing home. And when I talked earlier about how Massachusetts is really poised to win, we have and we had a bustling and successful chip industry right here in this region. I've already talked to so many of those companies who are so excited about the programs that they can use to bring that manufacturing home. These are family-sustaining wages. It's going to create 100,000 new jobs in our country, and they're great-paying jobs, and this is long overdue. Not only is it going to drive costs down because we'll make things here, but we won't experience volatility in the future. And so, to your question, we concerned about that investment? I don't get concerned when we're investing in productivity that is enduring and that is dramatic, right? The ROI on this bill is going to be dramatic. We have outsourced advanced chip design entirely, which leaves us on our heels as we try to compete for the 21st century and beyond. Not to mention, one thing that we will talk about next week is the unprecedented investment in K-12 STEM and in jobs of the future. The jobs are changing in our country, right? We need to make sure that we're attracting and retaining employees so that we stay on the cutting edge and keep our global leadership role. And so that is precisely what the CHIPS and Science Act does. And I look forward to Massachusetts leading once again in this sector.
Excellent, thank you. So our last question, we got to wrap up our time here, is in regards to Ukraine. It's always a developing story every day. So Washington is committing another $12.3 billion in aid to Ukraine, adding to the nearly $54 billion already approved this year, and the conflict continues with Russian President Vladimir Putin announcing the annexation of multiple regions last week and ramping up his nuclear rhetoric. Is the United States doing enough, or are we taking the correct approach?
Yeah, I think we are. I mean, and I was part of the first congressional delegation to go to Ukraine with Speaker Pelosi after the war broke out. We went to Kiev and met with President Zelensky, and it was eye-opening for a whole bunch of reasons, but also especially because I learned firsthand the especially brutal nature of the war that Putin has launched against the Ukrainian people. I mean, there are war crimes happening every day. I mean, everything from maternity hospitals being born to children being raped and then pushed into, handed over to traffickers, to playgrounds we saw yesterday being bombed. I mean, the massacres that have occurred, the graves that are being uncovered. I mean, it is quite horrific. And look, I mean, Putin thought he could do this with impunity. And so the question for the world is, you just let him do it? Let them take Ukraine, and then what's next, Moldova? And by the way, I met with the president of Poland who said, then are they next? And I said, well, you're a member of NATO. And he said, yeah, no, we're a member of NATO, but my parents are World War II, the World War II generation, and they remember when the world said, if Hitler were to go into Germany, we'll be there for you. And you weren't. So people are nervous about what would happen if Putin would decide to go into Poland. Look, I think we have a moral obligation to provide aid to the Ukrainians, both humanitarian and security assistance. We are both very cognizant of the fact that Putin may not be the most stable person in the world. He has nuclear weapons, and we are all worried about the fact that he keeps on hinting at using nuclear weapons, which would be unconscionable if he ever were to do that. But I think President Biden is approaching this probably in the best way at this particular moment, which is providing Ukraine mostly with defensive weapons and not with weapons that necessarily could be used to hit Moscow, because then you end up in a bigger confrontation. So we need to help defend the sovereignty of Ukraine without having this turn into World War III. And I think that's the balance. So I think we're doing this, at this point, approaching this the right way. There are signs that maybe countries like maybe the United Arab Emirates or Turkey or maybe some other countries might be interlocutors and might be able to help work to the point where we could actually have sensible conversations to get to a ceasefire and then ultimately, a resolution to this conflict. We need to pursue those very aggressively. The Vatican has offered its services, so anything we can do in that area to bring this to an end, we need to do that. And I know that there are back channels going on at the highest levels of our governments to try to figure out how to get this over with. And I've talked to President Biden about this many, many times. He understands, the dangers of doing nothing and the dangers of letting this get out of control. The final thing I'm going to say is I co-chair the Human Rights Commission in Congress as well. And I believe when people commit war crimes, that they need to be held accountable. And there needs to be accountability here. When you're uncovering shallow graves of 500 people whose hands have been tied behind their backs and they've been shot execution style, or when there's deliberate attempts to target, civilian areas, those are war crimes. When you rape children, when you force them into you hand them over to traffickers, those are war crimes. And if we don't want this ever repeated again by any other country, then there has to be accountability as well. And so, look, we all share the concern about how this ends, but we need to be open to, to constructive offers. But I think doing nothing or saying it's not our problem, is not acceptable. And if we do nothing, it will become our problem, whether we like it or not.
I mean, I don't even know what I can add to that. Of course, one of the reasons why so many members have traveled, myself included, to Romania and Poland and Moldova and the Ukrainian border, is to see up close, right, what's happening, to see, the bravery of the Ukrainian people and the courage that they have in fighting this unnecessary, this unprovoked war. And to understand the need for equipment. And that, when I went on my trip, it was, Democrats and Republicans together. We weren't Democrats or Republicans. We were Americans on that trip. And we both understood the immediate need to get equipment into Ukrainian hands and to also commit ourselves to being with them for the long haul. There's no choice here, right? The good guys must win. We are seeing what Putin is capable of every single day. His sham elections in the Eastern Territory, just the viciousness of his. He's a war criminal, and he knows no bounds. But also, the reason why we're seeing such high energy costs is because of his manipulation of the oil market, and that is even more reason that we need to move off of these Russian oligarchs, right? Whether they're in Russia, in Saudi Arabia, in Venezuela. The United States needs to take action so that we can achieve energy independence in a way that is not only going to preserve our planet, but it's also going to help this transition toward cleaner energy and off the volatility of oil and gas markets. And that is something that our allies are counting on us to do, because when their vulnerabilities are higher than ours, they're greater than ours. And at least when I was in Romania and Poland and Moldova, it was, we need you all to lead here. We need to have your wind, your solar, your fusion, your hydro, your nuclear, whatever energy sources, because if not you, China is right here knocking at our door, wanting to lay that infrastructure down. And so one of the reasons why these legislative actions, the big ones that we have taken, are so critically important, because this isn't just about the United States, security, our public health, our national security, our economic vitality. It's also about leading the world once again and moving our country away from these bad actors. So that is a big part of standing with Ukraine. We must make sure that the good guys win, that we stabilize, the world, and that we finally, are off this, the dependence of, oil oligarchs.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So we're going to switch over to some of our questions from the audience now. The first is, what are your opinions on the 100-mile border act, and do you think it will affect immigration reform in Massachusetts?
100-mile.
What is the 100-mile border act?
Yep. You have to reveal.
Yes.
I'm happy to talk about the border, what we should do at the border. Let me just say this. I'm going to just throw this out there. We talk about people coming to our country. and all the people being apprehended, understand one thing. We know that they're coming because they're being apprehended. We're apprehending them, number one. Two, the reason why a lot of people are coming here is because of the internal conflicts in their own country. And we need to make sure that our foreign policy doesn't exacerbate misery in some of these countries where people have no choice but to come here. Let me just throw one thing out there, because I was on a radio show and somebody brought this up. Someone said to me, you want to relax the economic sanctions against Cuba. I said, I do. I have for the longest time. I think our policy toward Cuba has been a failure and makes no sense. And all we're doing with this economic embargo is punishing people. But under the Trump administration, we tightened the sanctions even more. And under the Biden administration, he's kept those tightened sanctions in place. And the situation has gotten worse. As a result, I think in the last few months, 200,000 Cubans have come to the Mexican border because they can't survive in their own country. So the point of the matter is, we need to be thinking, when we impose some of these blanket sanctions on countries, what is the result? If the result is to get rid of the government or to change the government, well, after since 1960 we've been doing this, I don't think it's working, right? But surely our point can't be to increase misery on people, because when we do, they come here. Not because they necessarily want to, but because they have no choice, because they want to feed their kids.
Yeah, if I could just add one thing, because, I think Jim touched on this in the beginning around inflation right now, especially in the next few weeks, is being used as as sort of a political weapon in our elections, right? I think one of my colleagues said on one of the Sunday shows, when Republicans talk about inflation, they're almost gleeful about saying, we have inflation, and these high cost of families are killing, our families across and they call it Bidenflation. Now, I think we all know that right now the entire world is feeling record inflation. This is, it's pandemic induced, and you need people to come to the table to solve the problem in a very earnest way, right? I mean, I'm not gleeful at all about the pain that I see in families like the one I grew up in. I can only imagine, my dad was a union iron worker. My mom struggled, with part-time minimum wage jobs to kind of keep our family afloat. If any one of our bills had increased, we would have felt that in a major way. And so, you got to go to work to fix it, right? That's the reason why we've been trying to cut energy costs. We've been trying to cut prescription drug prices, healthcare premium prices. At every turn, we're just trying to reduce the burden because of what is happening out there in the world. I will say the same thing about immigration. When we have an immigration, it's not even a conversation. It all goes to the border or to the wall, which is a crucial piece. We must secure our border. We must interdict contraband when it comes into our country with tools that work, by the way. I never saw a wall stop fentanyl. I do see surveillance stopping fentanyl at our borders. So we need to have an intelligent conversation about what works and what doesn't work. But that's not what comprehensive immigration reform is. We don't process people in nearly enough time for them to have a status in our country. Everyone hangs in limbo. And so, I guess one tactic is to put children and women and families who are fleeing from violence and pain on a plane to make a point. Or you could get your butt to the table and talk about how we're going to revamp our laws that are so old they don't apply anymore in our country. We don't have the system to keep up with the people who are coming to our borders. That is the job of Congress, and that is what we need Republicans to partner in us. Reducing costs for families, solving your workforce issues so that you can pass those savings on to your customers. So let's go find those folks. Let's go find the folks who are actually going to do the work.
Thank you very much. We have time for one more question. One more. Thank you, Kat. Cannabis has made a big difference in north central Massachusetts over the past few years now. And the president announced his pardons earlier this week, later last week. What's being done at the federal level so that that cannabis growth can be seen throughout the country?
Well, we're trying to pass the Safe Banking Act, and I chair the Rules Committee, and I've attached it to about 100 different bills, and it's gone over to the Senate where we can't seem to get it to move. My hope is maybe before the end of the year, we'll be able to get the Senate to just accept it. I mean, there's all kinds of politics going on around it, like, oh, if you're going to do this, I want to do this, and this. You know, one of the things that I've always felt is that you don't have to agree on everything to agree on something, right? And if the something we agree on is there, get it done, and we can fight over the other stuff. I mean, if everybody agrees that we ought to pass a safe banking law to make it easier for people to be able to buy whatever they need at whatever cannabis facility there is. I mean, use your credit card, so you don't have to go with cash. Be able to write out a check. You'll be able to use our banks and our financial systems in a way like other businesses can. Then let's just pass the damn thing. I mean, just, you know, the president said he'll sign it. We've passed it overwhelmingly in the House time and time and time again. I've attached it to defense bills and, you know, omnibus bills and continuing resolution bills, and then they take it out. And so, that really, that's a big chunk of what we need to do. And we also need to, you know, I'm grateful for what the president did. Governor Baker did, you know, something similar here in the state. I'm grateful for that because it's the right thing to do, you know, to help, you know, expunge people's records, you know, who have possessed cannabis in the past. So that's what we're trying. I'm still not giving up hope that we can't get this done by the end of the year, but I think that would be a big achievement if we can get it done.
I have nothing to add. I'm just rooting Chairman McGovern on finding the vehicle to pass it again and for it to get across the finish line. The Senate has held this up, and so we just need to get it done. That's where Congress plays a role. This isn't the first thing where the market and the states have led on an issue, and Congress needs to follow up with the necessary infrastructure. We're seeing that with EV vehicles, which is why we passed the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, so that we could kind of keep up with what consumers were already doing. And this is just another example of that. But my faith, as always, is in Chairman McGovern.
Excellent, thank you. Well, I want to make sure you guys have time to mingle with the crowd. So let's give a warm North Central applause to Congressman McGovern and Congressman Trahan. Thank you. And as always, I want to thank our sponsor, President Lapidus and Fitchburg State, for sponsoring today's luncheon. And of course, Fitchburg State table is right here, folks. If they want to hear from you, they want to see you, so please don't be afraid to introduce yourself to them. Thank you, folks, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you so much.